It's a great pleasure to be here. And I have to say, it's a great pleasure, especially also Rania was a former student. So our connection goes very, very far back. Um, I'd like to take the opportunity to commend her for what I think is really outstanding effort, work to bring together, as you mentioned, Eric, it's very timely, and I will talk a little more about the timeliness of it. And we hope, really, it becomes a template for other countries as well to adopt. So let me say that first I'll say a little bit on why this is so important now. And I want to touch on three issues that Rania focused on, on ownership, on accountability, and on transparency. And so in the setting is particularly important because we all know the COVID pandemic has generated global financial strains, especially in emerging markets. It's an extremely regressive pandemic, and it has led to significant financing needs, very large financing gaps, pretty much across the board, in varying degrees, but pretty much across the board. So the allocation of finance, the allocation of competing demands is very much it's always been a topic. It's an increasingly important topic going forward. I would add to that the significant financing needs from public and private sector are also at a time in which, and Rania mentioned this is also how these things map to various goals. Well, most of those goals have suffered significant setbacks during the pandemic, ranging from educational programs to gender equality and so on. So the framework of accountability of funding is particularly timely and important when you have large needs, scarce resources, and big setbacks in goals. So to reiterate, it couldn't be more timely. On the issue of ownership, perhaps let me work backwards. Let me focus on the transparency. One of the big attractive, which is, as I said, I hope this becomes a template of this work, is it is a major step in the direction of transparency, greater transparency. This is also, Eric, you mentioned the initiative of the G20. There is hardly a G7 or a G20 meeting where the issue of transparency doesn't come up again and again. Now, I have to caveat, of course, money is fungible. So I think, the issue that we can always apportion things and allocate things very tidily is subject to a lot of caveats. But I think transparency and accountability are something that, whether it's private fund managers looking where to invest, or multilaterals and bilateral creditors, assessing the impacts of their lending, accountability is and transparency are recognized as to be of increasing importance. In the context of the World Bank, there is a major drive, for example, on increasing transparency on financial accounts, fiscal accounts, debt, and so on. This, you know, this contribution by Rania is an important step in that direction. Let me say a couple of words. I know we're running tighter on time, on the issue of ownership. And again, this connects to timeliness. I started out by mentioning the legacy of the pandemic, you know, the setback to goals, the large financing needs. Well, looking ahead, these are precisely the kinds of times where difficult actions are part of the resolution of the process. Governments, whether it's implementing new energy policies or the need to reshape the budget, the need to do post-pandemic belt tightening in an environment in which there are still dire needs, is ripe for social discontent. And this is where the issue of ownership is so important. Bringing in all the stakeholders, importantly also reaching the issue of communication, reaching to the broad audience, for also not just creditors and multilaterals and the international community, but the domestic community. Because without ownership, what we know of IMF programs and many other structural reforms is that many will be doomed to fail. So the issue of through accountability, through transparency, in showing what governments can deliver or are delivering on the various development goals, I think one can make an outreach into that ownership, because without ownership, these are very difficult times in which to engage in significant policy changes. I will conclude with the nowadays one cannot really have almost any discussion without bringing in the environment into the main focus, and Rania, of course, listed it as one of the areas that you know, are part of the goals. I think when we're looking at outreach to the global community, there is a new momentum for development finance that is building the whole area of green bonds, the greater wave of consciousness of the environmental issue. So again, going back to the issue of the timing of this book, I think it is very important to recognize that reaching out to that new potential public-private international creditor base is also, I think, something that, again, I hope this becomes a template for other countries' approaches as well. Let me stop there.